This video is brought to you by Vanlife and Chill merchandise and t-shirts. More about that at the end of the video.
My name is Leanne. This is my husband Paul. This is our camper van, a 79 GMC Vandura named Van Morrison. We've been on the road for almost 8 months. We've taken a year off, and I guess the point of our trip really is to just get out, experience, meet people, have experiences, and just see the world.
It needed a bit of mechanical work when we first started with it. Even though we did a lot of the work, stuff has still come up along the way. I wouldn't recommend someone getting a van this old unless you have a lot of money to fix it or unless you can work on it yourself. It's a high roof van that was converted by a company in Edmonton, Alberta. We didn't do a whole lot to the exterior body, but spruce up the paint, painted the top on it, moved the tire from the back to the front. That's mainly because we haul a motorcycle on the back of the van with us.
The motorcycle, the main purpose, other than the fact that he couldn't go a year without riding a bike, is that it saves a ton in gas, and it's kind of like nimble and easy to get around. So, but in order to carry it, Paul had to do quite a bit to kind of get it ready to go, and it can be a bit tricky even just driving with it on, and it took us quite a while to get kind of used to the weight of
I had to add a set of airbags to the rear axle of the van just to pick up the weight of the bike. We had to get a heavier hitch receiver for the van and put it on just to hold the extra weight, because it's nearly 500 pounds total extra hanging off the back. But it was worth all that work because, yeah, it's a fraction of the price to fill this thing with fuel and do our running around, getting water, groceries, and even going out with our laundry. Anytime you don't have to run the van, you save quite a bit of money for more fun things.
It's the little emblem that sort of makes us stand out, I guess, makes our van stand out. And then obviously our Instagram name. I would recommend actually that this is really nice to have because it makes you look like you're touring more so than just living.
We added a solar panel that sits flat on the roof, and it can charge a house battery inside for running some small loads inside the van. So this is our 14-year-old cat, Benny, who had to come along because we couldn't stand to leave him at home. He's adapted quite well for an old cat, and he does a lot of sleeping, but also walks on the leash. As for small renovations, we've just painted our ceiling just to update it. It was kind of like someone had smoked in it. It was quite yellow. The walls and everything we did ourselves with some pine wainscoting and stain just to give it more of like a cabin look. We painted cupboards. We also installed new cupboard doors just using plywood and actually just giving it like a panel look just to kind of update it because we really didn't want to spend time in it. It was kind of old and smelly, not that great. The floor we were able to actually repurpose out of a mall that the store was getting pulled out, so we were able to do a vinyl plank floor, which kind of is nice to sweep out. I wouldn't recommend a carpet in one of these because unless you have a vacuum, it's kind of hard to clean up after yourself.
At nighttime we have like Reflectix panels that go in the windows, which is has been like a huge savior as far as sound, like even just sound breaking and keeping it warm.
This is our bed. It's a couch now, but it folds flat and takes up most of the van when you're sleeping in here. We're pretty tall, so we actually end up putting our feet out on the front two seats to help like sleep in here, so because our feet would hang over the end of the bed. The only downside is it kind of takes up the whole van when it's out, so we're usually both sleeping in it or we're both up at the same time, and it has to be put away if we want to use the kitchen. It's the only downfall to having the couch bed. It comes with a stovetop, furnace, fridge that can run on propane or the 12-volt battery. Everything worked when we got the van, which is great. There's a lot of cupboard storage in this van, which we really like. We do use a chemical toilet sometimes if we have to. That's just stored in the back corner. We also use a pump sprayer shower, which is kind of good for when you're a long ways away from any kind of shower. It saves you a bit of money too. A lot of times we'll just put this blue jug on our motorcycle and go into town, get water, and then we can do that about once a day. The van holds water as well. It holds about 2 of these full in a jug under the sink. You can add it from the outside if you want. So that's kind of neat to top up water, which is important, which you always need.
Our gray water storage then for our sink is just like a 5-gallon bucket, and so we usually just dump that as needed when we can.
This here used to be, I think, a bit of a sleeping space, maybe for children or something, but we converted it just into some closing shelves and the bedding that needs to kind of get stored every night. So that was something we had to build in as well, just to kind of organize things. We don't bring a whole lot of clothes. It's like, you know, you wear stuff a little more often than you do at home, and we really had to pick what we wanted to bring, because that's all the space you kind of get for everything. Definitely one person cooks at a time in this van. Just like Leanne's sitting now, she usually stays at the front, or I do, depends who's cooking, and the other person's taking up the room here so they can get in the fridge, get in the cupboards and cook and be in the sink. It's tight, so one person almost has to be kind of out of the way and the other person has to be doing the cooking or cleaning. We're like I said, we're kind of big in here too, so with both of us around the kitchen or the sink, it usually turns into kind of a eruption sometimes of emotions.
Especially if we're really hungry. Having ready-made food on hand is a huge, so we actually don't eat out like at all, and so we cook all of our own food, and we're pretty conscious of eating healthy, so we try and prepare everything, so we spend quite a bit of time cooking. So yeah, always making sure that we're like properly fed during the day to kind of alleviate some stress and some anxiety, I guess, is pretty important. Insulating the floor. We didn't insulate the floor, and that would have been a huge bonus.
Some type of a layer of insulation before you lay whatever flooring, just to give you a little, because when it gets real cold, you can hardly walk on like a vinyl plank floor.
Or
and
like a yoga mat down to kind of keep it warmer.
Insulate better all around. As much as you can, as much insulation as you can shove in if you're going to be in cold climates, because it has a furnace, but when the cold leaks, you lose it all, and the furnace runs all the time, so it's always a battle to keep it warm.
Yeah. Like I said, we've been on the road for 7 months. This is 50 square feet, so it's a pretty tight area. Most of the time, I mean, we spend a lot of our time outside if we can, but if it's raining, you know, then or if it's like really cold or snowing or whatever, then we spend sometimes like a full day in the van, and it's just the 2 of us, and it's a fairly small space. We've definitely learned kind of a lot about ourselves and a lot about the person beside us.
It's nice because it shows you how much less you can live with, and maybe how much extra you were, spending money on that's really not necessary. The less stuff you bring with you too, it just makes it easier. It takes a lot of worry away when you have less things, even alone, like even just less laundry to have to worry about, or bills to pay that aren't there. There's just more time to really think about what you wanna do yourself.
When we left, I remember saying to people back home that I was so excited for sunrise and sunset, and that's been, I don't even know that I could even begin to explain the positive of being able to be outside all the time. I mean, people that are outside understand that, right? But I mean, just simply seeing a sunset with him, right? And we spend a lot of our time when we're in the van, like at night, laying in bed, and we're like, remember this, remember that. So I think a huge positive is being able to have this mind-altering experience, and being able to share it with him is huge.
It makes things feel a lot easier if you're not going to do it forever either. When you get done with whatever trip you've taken or however long you might be living in a van, once you kind of overcome how to do this, it actually makes things that you're maybe considering doing differently when you get back home, like really small hurdles. That, like maybe moving somewhere else or changing jobs, it just doesn't seem like that big of an obstacle now, because now you kind of see more and you've seen more, and now the things you're comfortable with back home, they don't seem like actually that big of problems or maybe that big of obstacles.
Yeah.
And you want to maybe try more in just your regular life that you may be getting back to.
Would you recommend this lifestyle to anybody?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would. Don't go into it thinking you can't do it without money, though. I mean, I suppose you could and try to get money from people and borrow it, or just live off handouts alone.
Or
but
move a lot less. We moved
Yeah.
a ton, right? We were saying earlier, we figure we've done, by the time our trip is over, we'll have done 30,000 kilometers. So, I mean, our biggest expenses are food and gas. And so if you can cut down on gas, then it's maybe a little bit more manageable.
Yeah. Definitely plan it and know what a doable budget is. We kind of just estimated a budget, and we almost should have looked into it more, what it's going to cost us for even distances alone. And
we were almost 500 over it every month.
So really look into it, because you don't want to, you almost don't want to be too cheap on the trip to like miss some of the things you could see, but you want to make it affordable so you don't have to borrow a whole bunch of money to do it maybe, or whatever your situation might be. But definitely consider the financials. Like, there is costs that come along with living in a van for sure.
But I think also don't let it hold you back. We also still have a lot of our possessions at home. Like, we didn't sell, like, you hear of people that say, I sold everything and I'm living in my van. We didn't, because we knew that this would maybe only be for a year. And so why sell everything if you have to then start to buy stuff back, right? So we kept quite a few of our possessions. I think something too, like even the lady that we were just talking to, and people that you talk to along the way, there's just this huge fear of the unknown, of not knowing, well, can I do it? What about this? And what about that? And what about this factor? And it's like, you kind of just have to go. You have to just jump and trust that it'll be okay. A specific podcast that we were listening to had a quote of, wherever you go, there you are. And I love that. And that has sort of become our, like, part of our trip, right? It's like, you choose to do this for a specific reason, whatever that reason is, and you think that reason that you're leaving isn't going to follow you, right? Your issues with whatever you were doing in your previous life are going to follow you here.
And your trip in your van or living in your van, everything you were feeling when you're at home, it will come back. It doesn't clean everything off the slate. You're just going to be dealing with all that again when, kind of like when the party ends and you're like just living life in your van and dealing with normal, everything
comes back.
All your troubles are still there. You still have to deal with all the stuff at home that you had at home. So don't think it's going to erase everything as soon as you hit the road.
I think, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Hey everybody, I'm Forrest Stevens. I'm the man behind the video that you just watched. Today's video is sponsored by merchandise that I have created, the Vanlife and Chill merch. There's men, women's t-shirts, aprons, cups, cell phone cases, all sorts of cool stuff. In the description below, you will see a link for a Spreadshirt shop. Click that, go ahead and cop some merch. All the proceeds go towards the distribution costs for my feature-length documentary called The Reality of #Vanlife, which is posed to be on Netflix if everything goes right. So thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you next week.